Jason as our student success coordinator, but tonight he is here to speak to us about a open data opportunity. And keep in mind in the back of your head, we will be diving into capstones this week. And so just kind of keep project ideas in the back of your head. But with that said, I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Jason and let him kick it off.
All right. Awesome. Hey guys. But yeah, so I'm really excited. Obviously, I've talked with you guys before as student success. But yeah, today, like Max was saying, here just to talk about the open data portal in Syracuse that I'm really excited to work on for my day job. Have just been with the city of Syracuse for 3 months now. Yeah, so can you guys see my screen okay here?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, so it's just going to be kind of like a quick tour of the open data portal, and then just diving into a little bit of how it can be used, specifically focused on our API. It can be used for like maps and visualizations, but I just wanted to focus on what might be of interest for you guys as you're, starting to kind of brainstorm for your capstone, what sort of project you might want to use, what sort of APIs you might want to tie into, just kind of trying to put this stuff in your head if it's anything you're interested in. So yeah, just the data program manager with the city of Syracuse for my full-time job. All right, so that's just the screenshot of the open data portal. So basically just why open data? We do it because it increases the transparency about how government provides services, whether it's budget information, how many potholes Syracuse has fixed, whether it's like how many crimes have happened in the city and what types of crimes, or how many complaints have been made about police officers in the city. There's actually a lot of data, and it's a newer thing that governments have been sharing a lot of that data online. So it's kind of neat, just kind of gives some more in the information about like what the city does with all of our tax money, our water bills, our taxes, whether we pay or our landlord pay, just kind of like, hey, all this money's going to the city. What's the city doing with it? So that type of thing. A lot of the information is available to be requested through like freedom of information laws, but the kind of the goal of open data is just putting this information out there so anybody can access it for research, for personal projects, for business projects, if there was something, that would help them with that. So right now we have 105 data sets, 27 of them involve snow data, 10 of them are budgets. We have 21 different maps. We have 15 crime data sets, 4 housing, and some other different ones involving, bike safety. I already mentioned the police officer complaints and other government services. A lot of them are in table form, just kind of like, an Excel table. A lot of them are kind of location based. So we might have them on a map with geolocation, like latitude, longitude coordinates. So to get to the data, we're just going to jump into it. It's just our website, data.syrgov.net. And once we're in there, you can kind of, search for a section. So I'm just going to jump over to that now. Let's see. All right, can you guys still see my screen all right?
Yep.
Yes.
All right, perfect. All right, so yeah, so my day job, I help just to kind of manage this with putting new data sets on there, with kind of making maps, different visualization stuff. So yeah, we just have, different categories. If you would just want to kind of look at the data that way, water, housing, public safety. The recently added ones will always kind of show up here. I have it that the most recent 12 are automatically displayed there. If you want to look at our most popular ones, they're down here. We have parcel data, water main breaks, and we've been featuring projects made with open data. My supervisor, Nico, and I, we went to a student hackathon at SU this spring, and 2 teams used our data. One of them, so, we just featured them on there. I'm sure we've talked about it a little bit. At a hackathon, you do a quick, like 2-minute video, just kind of explaining the project that you made. So we just linked the video that they made. Let's see, they did kind of lead, water pipe visualization, kind of using the data to just show a map based on, if houses in Syracuse had lead pipes, cast iron, copper. So that was kind of a neat one. We linked that, and they actually won one of the prizes at QS Hacks, but it's just kind of on there. Another team I thought had a cool idea. They named their project, Car Care for QS. One of the students had gotten a flat tire in Syracuse recently. And so they saw that we have a data set about pavement ratings. Like a low score would be like, hey, the road is really bad. A high score would be like, hey, it's really good. It has good quality. So they had the idea to do an app that you would just kind of put your starting address and your ending address, and it would they did a Python app, and it would kind of spit out the average road rating. And their goal, if they, so that was their kind of minimum viable product. Their goal was, if they had more time, was to kind of do like a mapping based function, like, hey, your current average road score is a 4, but if you went this route, it would give you like, like this score. So you could choose not just based on how quickly it would get there, but like on how good the roads are. So I thought that was neat. If you're interested in looking at their hackathon videos explaining it, that's on here too. So I'm just going to jump into some of the data sets that I think are most interesting. So, we've been doing, or I've been, we've put a lot of the crime data up there. This data we get weekly from the police department. Crimes are broken into part 1 crimes, which are kind of higher level, and part 2 crimes. So these are just the kind of the date, DR number, address, the code of the offense, and, just if someone was arrested, if they weren't, there's more information, if it was from a vehicle, if it was from a building. It's just, yeah. So it's kind of interesting here. If you're like, hey, I just want to filter and I only want to, whoops, sorry about that. The wrong button. So if you, some of the stuff you can just kind of look through in the data portal, like say, I only want to look at, whatever, motor vehicles. I've got a fancy new car. I want to make sure it's safe. So just kind of, you can filter it down by that. And I have also been working, because just a table data is interesting and all that. I've also been working on mapping some of that data. So when we get the data from the police, we've been geocoding it. So just kind of assigning it to latitude, longitude coordinates. So this is that same crime data set with the latitude and longitude points added. So each of these points is going to be one of those crimes. It's reduced down to the 100 block level, but this will have all of that same information, but it also gives you a latitude, longitude coordinate for that kind of that block that the crimes are happening on. So that's, one data set that I think is interesting. Like I said, that's updated weekly. So let's see, I'm going to look at a restaurant one specifically to kind of dive into a little bit of our API. Each data set has its own API, which we'll be getting into a little bit later in the course, but, application programming interface. So each data set just has its own endpoint. So if you want to call all of the data, you would just use, this URL and, call it in your JavaScript code, and it'll return back like all of that data in one big object. One thing that I like is it's not great.
Jason, I think you stopped sharing your screen.
I did. Oh no, I'm so sorry. Thank you for letting me know.
No problem.
How long had I been going without a screen?
Just a minute.
Okay.
Just into this last data set.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Thank you for letting me know. I must have, when I clicked over, I must have hit the stop sharing. So you probably didn't see the, oh, good Lord. Sorry about my dog. 1 second, I'm just closing the door. So each data set has its own API endpoint that can be called. So right here, we're looking at, a data set that we got from the Downtown Committee of Syracuse, just all of the restaurants and bars that are still open, as of February 2022. So the API endpoint is going to be right down here. So if you call this, it's going to return all of the data in the table. So I'm just gonna, let's see. So again, this is all map based. So this data includes latitude, longitude, coordinates. All right, sorry, just taking a second to load. All right, yep. So each dot, is a restaurant. It's going to have all of that information on there. You can also view it in table form on here, or you can do map form. So say if you wanted to, put this in an application, web application, you don't want to just hit the API and get all of the information and show it to your user. So we're just going to kind of do like just a quick kind of call in that. All right, so I am just going to go into the, this thing in the zoom in the way is driving me crazy. It's so hard to click on stuff. All right, so sorry. So I'm just going to go to, let's see, business subcategory, because I've already kind of looked at the data set to know like, all right, which thing do I want to call? All right, so I'm just going to do late night. All right, so say I wanted, an application to just display like what businesses in Syracuse are open late night. So I'm just doing business subcategory, like late night. And when it returns the data, say if I do this, it will return everything. Sorry for how long it's loading. That's fun. Anyways, so we'll return the data, but say if I only want to show the name of the business and the website, and I want to show their X, Y, the latitude, longitude coordinates, I'm just going to kind of get rid of that stuff. I don't care when they opened. I'm going to just I'm going to keep the full address. All right. So say I want to change it for that. Maybe that'll help us get a quicker response. Oh, that's lovely. Like late night. It's fun. Sorry about that, guys. Swear it usually works. Anyways, sorry about that. So just kind of going back to the response that ideally we would be getting is something like that, where it would spit back, the attributes, organization name, the business, the full address, and the latitude, longitude coordinates. So then once you, unlike me right now, once you got your response to kind of display the way that you wanted it, the URL up over here, the query URL would be what you would tie into your web application. A lot of times when I'm kind of fooling around with this, I'll use Postman. I know Max will be getting into that. Just so you have your base URL and then all these different parameters that you can pass in, maybe it's, a zip code. I just want to look for businesses at, whatever, 13202. All right, maximum 132. And maybe one of these will work. Yeah, so that one works. So it's just respond, it's pulling back, all of the restaurants that have the zip code of the 13202. And once, I would kind of fiddle around. So the one that I was putting in wasn't returning the right stuff. So then I, would just look at the table to try to figure out, okay, what was I doing wrong? I was doing business subcategory. All right. And so this is kind of a pain. So maybe either way, could have just figured out like, all right, subcategory, I'm just going to do bars and dinner. Cause I thought, I guess I didn't have it right. So a little bit of troubleshooting. All right, so I'm gonna try that again. Let's see if that gives us the response that we want. Okay, yeah, so now just, bars and dinner. it'll return back the restaurants that have that. So it's not a super clean, good data set. But either way, so that is one thing. One of the things that we're trying to work on with some students is using one of our data sets of, it's just like trash day pickup. It's a table that just has all of the addresses in the city of Syracuse. I know I was mentioning it to Caitlin. She did a project really pretty much exactly like this for her capstone for careers in code a few years back. So we just have the, all of the addresses and then just the trash day. So some students are helping us, Lord willing, get a, web application that can just query this data and, passing in, the full address or the street number and street name, and it'll return back the trash day. So I was just kind of playing around with that data set, just kind of like, just to get a better handle on like, hey, how it works. So if the students run into some issues, what would happen with that? So right now, when I click it, it's just hitting the full API. And like Max has been showing you in the console, let's see, I have it to just kind of return the whole object in here. So then that big URL that I showed you, it's going to show like, I have an array of, 20, whatever, a bunch of different things. And it's going to show each address, shows the full address and the street name and trash day. So this is the information that I'm going to want to query in here. So that, again, that's not a finished thing. Honestly, Caitlin's was better, was farther along than where I am. I just started this weekend to kind of play around with it. So that's kind of just the high level, quick, kind of description of just the API console. Again, it's not great. I think Postman works better. So if you just use that URL and play around with it in Postman, I think you'll have more success when you guys get to the API section. As you're, if you look at the website and see that, we don't have the information that you would like to use, or if you're interested in some data, you can make a data set request. There's just some forms at the bottom of the website, just letting us know like, hey, I would really like, somebody asked if we could release data about like all of the trees in Syracuse, like what kind they are, how old they are. So I'm just, trying to see if we have that data. I don't know. I think somebody in our parks department might. So it's kind of interesting, kind of like trying to hunt that stuff down. I don't know what they need or want that data for, but if people ask for data, we try to track it down and try to get permission to share it. And if you guys make something with public data, we love to feature it like we did with the hackathon participants. So you can also let us know there, just if, the data project, if you have a website linking it, just send us that web address. I would love to feature it. I'm especially, inclined toward, to promote you guys because I'm excited about what we're doing. But yeah, and then we also have a quick, sign up for monthly data set notifications. As we release new data sets each month, we just send out a quick kind of email letting folks know, hey, this data set was released, so that people can kind of be aware as they're making different projects with that. So yeah, that's kind of the main stuff that I wanted to hit on with the API console. Sorry for the snags that I hit with the query parameters. But yeah, does anyone have any questions about that? Either data we have or how it can be used?
So one thing to think of, guys, in context here is that later this week, we're going to start diving into doing your own capstones, right? And so I know Caitlin took inspiration from a lot of this data set and said like, hey, this is awesome, but there's no easy way to get access to the trash information. So wouldn't it be nice if I could go on one website and it would go through a huge amount of data and find that for me? And so that's one thing to start thinking of, right? Of when you start building an app, sometimes it's really hard to figure out what you want to build or where your inspiration is coming from. And so this open data Syracuse portal may be a good thing to check out and go, this data is interesting, but I don't really, it's not particularly accessible, or I would love to overlay 2 of these data sets together, or, oh, wouldn't it be cool if we could get more information out of? And so that's where you want to kind of be taking that approach here, because there are some technical concepts with like hitting the endpoints and getting the JSON data and all of that stuff that I promise we will be getting to. After we do our JavaScript modules, we circle back and layer in how to use APIs, and we'll use the New York Times bestseller list to actually build out a whole web app. But this is a really great step to start thinking in advance of what do I want my capstone to do? Because by the end of the week, we're actually going to start doing the wireframing and the front end design for that and all of that kind of work. So spending some time on this open data site and figuring out, maybe there's an app that I can make that's more Syracuse oriented, right? Or more data oriented. So that's one thing to check out here. It isn't a requirement that you use this for your capstone, but it may be a good source of inspiration. So I just want to plant that seed, and then I will open it back up for any questions for Jason or about the capstone or anything like that.
You can ask questions now.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, can you hear? Are we on?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh,
Yep,
okay,
we can
sorry.
hear you.
I'm not sure. Okay. What is your day-to-day work like?
All right, so yeah, my day-to-day work, it's kind of broad because I have like 3 main things that I'm working on. One of them being the Open Data Portal website, which this website, it's through, either way, it's similar to like a WordPress, kind of like drag and drop. I can edit the HTML, but it's not super like a ton of coding. So working on the website, working with departments to get data, try to get data sets, release data sets, communicating with folks that want to use the data. Maybe it's neighborhood groups, like community data groups, Salt City data. Maybe it's Tomorrow's Neighborhoods Today. We had someone in gun violence request some crime data. So kind of working with that is one part, really better developing the open data portal, making it more useful to residents. Another thing that I do at work is help with the surveillance technology committee, where when the city wants to, when a department wants to use a technology that could be considered a type of surveillance, it goes through a committee that my supervisor and I help kind of chair. So it's just a lot of research into those technologies, opening up to public comments, meeting with the group of, professors and faculty and like NYCLU staff to discuss it. So that's interesting, but it's not coding. It's not working with data. It's just me taking notes, and it's interesting, but it's just different. And then the third part of my job is helping to apply for a Bloomberg Philanthropies does a What Works Cities certification. So it's just an application that cities do to just show like, hey, we're using data in these ways. And it's a big, huge application. So that's kind of the third part of my job that I'm working on. So not coding, but it's really seeing how are we using data as a city? Are there ways we can do it better? Working with the budget department, working with finance. Are we really doing these like results driven contracting? Like when we contract with people, are they doing what we ask them to? Are there people that could do it better for cheaper? So it's interesting. It's really a whole broad range of stuff. I enjoy working on the data portal most, but unfortunately, I don't get to spend as much time on that as I would like to. So it's a broad thing. Good question, Nicole.
Any other questions for Jason?
Yeah, so it's kind of like outside of that, but so you said you were working with like different surveillance. Were you like a part of the committee that put the surveillance cameras in like the Euclid part of Syracuse University off campus? Or
Which are you talking about, the cops cameras?
yeah, because I know it was like a student specifically that worked with pretty sure it was the city of Syracuse to get those cameras installed in the neighborhood. So just kind of wondering if you guys were like that same exact committee that did that, or
I don't think that was us. Like if they're the cops cameras, those were approved beforehand. We've been working on the Syracuse police asked to do like automatic license plate readers on certain parts of the city, specifically kind of on ramps and off ramps near 81, near 690. So if there was like, say, shots fired in a neighborhood, they could look at, hey, what license plates drove by this license plate reader on these days, and then would have a list of all the license plates that's drove by. So that's one technology that we assessed recently. I'm not aware of Euclid cameras being one, but that
Okay.
that may have been before I started at the beginning of this year too.
Okay. Oh yeah, you did say 3 months, I think. Also, okay. Either way, that is kind of cool though. So.
Yeah.
I
Any-
don't have a question,
yeah.
but, oh,
You're good. They can still hear me in the room.
Yep.
Yep, we can hear you.
But yeah, everything that you said was interesting. It's funny because when you pulled up the trash today, I was literally running outside today because we have an issue with the recycling.
Yeah.
Today is my trash day, but they don't usually come today, but they came today right after the trash people. So I was like running outside. So that was interesting to see. And some of those addresses are near my house.
Oh, okay. Nice. Yeah, we've obviously been having a lot of issues with trash delays in the city right now.
It would be nice though, the information that you just said, that would be like a good capstone, like license plate readers, and then if there's shots fired, because if there's like a getaway car down, yeah, I might want to do some crime stuff. That
Yeah.
is it. I want to look into that more.
Sure, yeah. And the license plate readers would not be on the data portal. That would be a specific data that the police would have. So I manage a couple of different things. We do have, the crime data that I showed you, just the kind of the block that the crime happened on, the date of the crime, the time, and like what the offense was. Was it a robbery? Was it a larceny? So that we have that data on there. So that definitely, we try to share as much data as we can, but as far as like the license plate, that's something we wouldn't be able to share publicly.
Oh, okay. But still
Yeah.
interesting to be able to pull some of that together for a project. So.
Yeah, and like Max is saying, like you don't have to be limited by just any one API. Like a lot of students will kind of take some data from this and then use it one API for this. It's really neat to see projects that kind of use a few different technologies, a few different things. Whatever, maybe use Google for directions, but it's just another tool. Like Max was saying, it's just I'm partial because I work on it all week, but it's just another tool to kind of have in your tool belt in terms of information to use for your website, for your web application.
So one thing to think about is, we talk about a lot about data, and then you hear about information, right? And my personal definition between the two is data isn't really usable until you turn it into information, right? It's all about transforming that, taking the data and making it accessible, or then figuring out something in the data is what bridges the gap between data and information. And that's just a personal definition, right? That's not an industry standard, but it's a really good thing to start looking at some of this data and being like, well, we've got weather data, right? We can easily go back and figure out what time the snow started. Wouldn't it be cool to figure out, what the average response time was for a snowplow? All right, if it snows at this time at night, the snowplows take 4 hours to get here, but if it snows at this point, they get here faster. That could be a web app that you could build that would be interlacing two of these APIs, right? Pulling in the web data, pulling in some of the snowplow information, and going from there. So it's definitely something to explore and figure out kind of what data is in there, right? Maybe you had someone who's suffering from a water quality issue, and you want to know how big of a problem that is across the city, or what neighborhoods that's affecting, right? You could dive into that and make that happen. So your capstones are really, really not limited. We had a student last cohort go in and say, I want to make a platform to make it easier to find events going on in central New York, right? And that could pull in some restaurant data here, but also allow other people to post up when a concert's in the area, right? So that's an example capstone. We really have a wide range of ideas here. But just want to focus it back on Jason for any final questions you may have for him on the data set.
What about, I ride my bike a lot.
Yep.
So I was just thinking about, I see a lot of bike lanes, but then they're not, I don't see that they connect sometimes. I see like there's a certain part of the street that has like a bike lane, and then there's a part that doesn't. So, what happens when the person is riding on the bike lane and then the bike lane is not connected? Like, where does the bike go after? That would be something that I would.
Yeah.
Create an app that would help a biker with connectivity. Like if wherever your destination is, kind of like to be able to map it out so that they would be able to stay on a bike lane and not have to maybe just walk in the street.
Yeah, no, so that's actually one data set I kind of wanted to hit on. This is from the Syracuse Metropolitan Transportation Council. So it's just the Syracuse bike suitability ratings. So they rate, not all the streets in Syracuse, but a lot of the main thoroughfares, excellent, good, poor, fair. So if you just wanted to ride and say excellent roads, it kind of shows that. But one of the things that I thought would be really interesting is, like doing some sort of app to show like, hey, I want to go from this side of town to over here. Like, what's the safest route? What's using just excellent or good roads, and how much percentage is on not on excellent or good? Is there a detour I could take to get a safer route? Like, I think that would be really cool.
Okay, and I think I have my Capstone.
All right. Yeah, well, again, excellent questions, everyone. I really appreciate being able to, chat with you guys on, about that. So always feel free to reach out if you guys had any questions or want to talk more about it. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Awesome. So let's kick off our stand-up like we normally do.
Mac,
Yes.
Max, I have the mic here. You want to set it up real quick, or there's 4 people here in person today, so.
Sure, give it a shot.
Yeah, all right. All right.
In
and
that
like,
case.
Real quick, whatever you guys want to do, really doesn't matter to me.
Yeah, let's do our stand-up. So what did we cover last week? What did we learn? What light bulb moments did we have? Whose name did you curse when you were doing the homework? Where are we at?
This is just Karen's.
I'm at a point where I understand. I just put this rate here too. Then right now.
Okay.
Is that yours?
Because before I wasn't understanding.
Oh.
I just went over there and I just looked at it, like not a lot of stuff in there. So now I know that if you say cow medium
Are you talking about
6, it will act like a cow 6 until the screen reaches that break point that's considered medium. I got it in my notes there.
Yeah, might be.
I learned a better way to take notes too.
Awesome. Yeah, and so we're gonna be diving into that a little bit more too on the breakpoints, and we're gonna spend some time tonight making our portfolio site a little bit more responsive. But I think, Larry, you hit the nail on the head, right? Well, when I start with a column, I tend to make it a certain size, but what if I want that size different on different size screens? So we're going to touch on that a little bit tonight about why we would want to do that, or how we can figure out, what different breakpoints we want and make it look different, while at the same time not having to redesign our entire site. So glad that you touched on some of that last week, and we will continue touching on that today as we wrap up the portfolio site. What else from this weekend?
For me,
For me, I feel like I finally understand a call and a role and everything from the basics up. So I'm excited to be almost finishing my Netflix, but close enough to be caught up with everybody.
Awesome. And I actually just found some slides and resources from cohort 1 from an instructor that I actually had at SU And while I was in college, I took courses from him, and he taught in cohort 1 of Careers in Code. So if we have some extra time at some point this week, I would love to go back and go through those slides as kind of a refresher. And that is kind of the point of this entire project week, right? We're not going to be doing any new concepts. We're going to be wrapping up the portfolio site today. Tomorrow, we have Christy Pressler coming in virtually as she is a UI and design expert. So she's going to spend about an hour talking about design principles and understanding them. And then she is going to do one-on-ones with you guys for your portfolio website. So you've got 2 options at the end of tonight's class. You can either say, I am done with Max's portfolio website. I really like the one that I found in week 1 or week 2. And you can start working on building that out and working with Christy to talk about design elements and how you would go about that approach. Or at the end of class, you can say, I really like Max's. I just want to keep tweaking it. I really want this to be over here. I want to change these colors. I want to work on mobile responsiveness, and all of that is fine as well. So tomorrow, Christy's going to come in and do a presentation on design. And then you guys tonight can decide, hey, you know, I really want to start working on my own little version of the portfolio site, or I want to keep working on Max's and tweak it. Because next week, Nathan Evan comes in and you get an entire week off from me, and he's going to teach you all about DevOps. He's going to teach you about Git and DNS and deploying sites to the internet and getting your portfolio live and buying a domain name and lots of fun stuff coming up. So he will be in next week. He is fully virtual, and I will touch on that in just 1 second. But anything else from last week, any moments during the homework, any concepts that we're not getting and want to review?
I had a big light bulb moment last night while doing Netflix with getting my pictures and like to line up together. And I had to send Max a message because I asked him about it. And it finally, literally while he was responding to me, the message popped up on my phone. I use Slack on my phone, and I went back in and I started putting it in. I was like, oh, the numbers. I don't know why it never made sense for the 12 columns to add up to be 12, even though he said it, jammed it home 50 million thousand times. But last night it finally, and I'm looking at my screen and I'm like, wait, this calculates up to be like 15. And I don't know why, but last night I was like, wait, let me try that. And as soon as I did it, it popped up and I looked at my phone and he was like, make sure they evenly, like you should have 2. It should be 2 cows. It should be cow 2, and it basically equaled up to be 12. And I was like, it was like, ta-da. I was like, yay, I did it. Thank you.
So HTML for me is one of those concepts that it's so hard to teach because it is so simple once you get it, and infuriatingly frustrating when you don't, right? And it's really hard to say, like, okay, really, we can sum up the last 4 weeks of everything we have learned, right? With like IDs, calls, opening tags, closing tags, content in them. All right, and there are a couple different tags of div and span and you know, image, and that's it. And that takes, you know, the whole 4 weeks to get. And at some point in that process, it clicks and you go, oh, he's not just using the grid because it's frustrating. He's using the grid because I can actually make mine look like that. I can actually get things to lay out. You know, I can figure out, oh, it is important to get that div inside of the div, or I can't just throw a class in here. It needs to be at this one specific spot, or whatever it is, right? And so I'm glad that you guys are getting over that threshold. I'm glad things are starting to click a little bit more. And so I'm excited to roll forward there. Any concepts from last week that we're not getting or that you want to spend a little bit more time on? Any additional light bulb moments? Anything like that?
I think for me, I did also have that light bulb moment, and I'm proud. And I think I was struggling a little bit with my style CSS. Like, I understood the divs and the rows and everything, but I had trouble like finding what worked. So I spent a lot of time like making up names, trying to remember the names and trying to see like what connected a lot. So I do understand how it works. I just got to work on myself to get this a little more.
Yep, and I think it's important to take that engineering concept, right, to break things down of, okay, here's what I want it to look like, and here's what mine looks like right now. Instead of saying, well, mine looks nothing like that, saying, okay, what's wrong with mine, right? Oh, the color doesn't match. All right, well, if I want to change the color, I have to have a class or an ID on it. So what class or ID makes sense here, right? All right, this is specifically the show name that I'm working on. So maybe I'll put an ID of show title on that, right? And then going step by step, because I think it's so easy to look at my final one and be like, mine will never look like that. And within 4 lines of code, be like, oh, mine now looks exactly like that, you know? So continuing on that process, we're going to have some fun going into JavaScript next. I see we enabled dark mode in the room. That's quite all right.
Yeah.
Like, huh?
Also knowing
Um,
We're in the dark again. Yay.
so
sorry, Wayne.
my,
Go ahead,
my-
Wayne.
so besides all of that, I think that just working more with, let's see, CSC, because it's like some stuff that you put in there to style what you need, it's not reflecting, and you're like, all right, what's going on? What did I do? So it's like just working with that a little bit more, and then should be more comfortable.
Yep, and the good news is while we are this is our last week in just HTML and CSS, now we go into JavaScript, we get even more more exposure to syntax, new concepts, and we start working with loops and all of that stuff. But then all of a sudden, it's like we come full circle when we get back to React, because React is, while it's a whole new thing to learn, it's half in JavaScript and half in HTML. And so that's what I think is fun about React, is that sometimes when there weren't quite as many light bulb moments as you wanted in HTML, but you get them in JavaScript, when you come back to using React, all of a sudden things start clicking a little bit more, because you're molding those two light bulb moments together, right? So I think that that's coming up next, and I think you guys will enjoy it. Anything else for stand up for last week?
I have a question.
Yep.
So what could we do with JavaScript? So I know what, like, front end, well, I guess I don't know. I guess I don't really, I know what I want to ask, but I don't think I know how to quite word it. Like, out in the field, I don't think that I like 100% like fell in love with HTML, but like have strong hopes that I'll like 100% love like JavaScript, or maybe I'll fall back in love with HTML after I don't 100% fall in love with JavaScript. What could you do with like JavaScripts? Like, I happen to like just see some stuff with JavaScripts, like, but not really connecting.
Yeah. So I'm actually going to borrow some slides that Jeff Passetti used in the first cohort. And let me do a quick rundown of that, because I think we touched on Stack a little bit in the first day. But on the first day, it's kind of overwhelming, right? To like know all the different names and understand it. So I think it's worthwhile to just spend a minute reviewing this. So we talk about Stack, right? And there are really 3 pieces of the Stack. We've got our front end, our back end, and our databases. And oftentimes, because the databases are at the bottom of the stack, they're all considered back end. So databases is really a part of the back end, but when we say full stack, we just mean someone who can, if they are a web full stack developer, it means they can work on the front end code, what shows up in the browser, the backend code, which shows up and runs on the server, and then the databases itself, SQL or Mongo, something like that, where you're saving the data. So when we say full stack web, we just mean that they can do all three pieces of the stack. So when we say client side code, that means anything that's in the browser, that's going to be our HTML or CSS and our JavaScript. And then our server side code is things that are running on the server. So JavaScript is unique in that it can run both on the server and in the browser. But some other server-side languages we may have heard of, Ruby and Rails is the Ruby on Rails is the framework for that. Node.js and Express. For JavaScript, we've got Django and Python, PHP, C#, Java. WordPress is another popular server-side framework that runs in PHP. So basically, our front end is anything that's the user is interacting with. So we know our HTML is about our page structure, right? That's the content that's actually going to show up. We know CSS is our styling, right? And that's what's making things turn green or making things lay out differently or whatever it may be. And then last thing is our JavaScript. And our JavaScript is what's going to tie it all together and say, what happens when they click on this button? Oh, if I type this in, I want it to do something else somewhere else on the page. Oh, I would like my web page to show the current time and live update in the background. So basically, JavaScript is making our page interactive and making it load, making it update after the initial page load. So I think this basically touches on the rest, but basically front end is what's doing the rendering. Rendering just means taking our code and making it show up visually. All that code can be seen and edited by the user, which we've seen in the inspect tab. It can't really store anything in the browser other than just the page refresh. And the front end can't be modified just on the front end, right? So no one can, if they update your website, it's not going to save anywhere. Backend is servers, databases, kind of the middleman between the database and the front end. Backend code normally cannot be seen by the user, responds like requests. Databases we touched on, just saving data. Mongo, MySQL are probably the two most popular databases. And then we just touched on front end topics. So markup is how the syntax that you're storing your content in. Page layout is CSS. Search engine optimization we've touched on a little bit about using semantic tags. Extra functionality, that JavaScript is what we're going to start diving into in week 7, right after we do our first DevOps week next week. And then we will be touching on all the backend topics after we get into React. So week 17, 18-ish, somewhere around there, we get into using building our own APIs, which is what Jason just talked about. How do we pull something off like that? How do we have data in a database and make it accessible? We talk about server architecture, database administration, scalability, meaning making sure thousands of users can use our site, and then security, and then just a note on getting to full stack. Did that answer your question at all, or was I a little too slide happy there?
No, that answered my question. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah, so you can think about JavaScript as not only the next step for making our pages more interactive in the browser, but also for allowing us to get access to computer science concepts to make our code go further and do more.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
I'm a JavaScript fanboy myself. I personally, if I could leave HTML and CSS behind and write JavaScript all day long, I probably would. However, I also really do like React code. So if you thought I was enthusiastic up until this point, wait until we start JavaScript in week 7. You're going to really wish we had another instructor come in and break up the cohort. Okay, any other questions?
When something is hard coded, where would that fall?
It could be anywhere. That's a great question. So when we say hard coded, we really mean like, hey, this wasn't built to be dynamic. This was something that we decided wasn't going to be updated a lot, or the user didn't need to be using or changing. So we just hard coded it, meaning we like forced it into this one particular value. So you could hard code on the front end and say, this data is always going to show up. So when it says date last updated, instead of it pulling something dynamically, we are just going to type in the value. That would be an example of hard coding on the front end. You could hard code on the back end and say, this isn't something that gets updated in the database, so we're just going to type it in there. Or it could be a value in the database and you're going to say, we're not going to dynamically figure out how many users are in the system. We're just going to store that there are 10 users. So you could really hard code anywhere, and you will find that verbiage slipping into as we start working on full stack projects of saying, we're going to hard code this. We'll come back to it later and fix it.
Got it.
Any other questions? Did we manage to get the mic working in person, or did we throw it out the window?
Yep, so it's plugged in. What I'm thinking, Max, first is we gotta figure out these lights. I've emailed the venue place. Has this happened every class where like the lights go out and they never turn back on?
Like 3 times.
Yeah.
Really? Okay, I'm gonna reach back out to our venue person and see what we can do here. Max, what I'm thinking, so we have 4 mics here.
Yep.
I think we could probably get away with just setting up 2. That way 2 are always charging. That works.
That's cool.
All right.
Yep.
All right, so first I'm gonna do is unplug the Jabra. So probably won't hear us for a second. And plug the new one.
I'm going to resume recording. I'm going to share the outline. I'm going to talk about what we're doing tonight, and I am going to make sure we are on track for a break coming up. So guest speaker, Jason Scharf, if you've got any questions for him, you can always email him or reach out to him on Slack. Good idea to start exploring that, because in the second half of the week, we're going to get into the capstone and starting brainstorming on that, getting that process going from there. We did stand up. We are going to knock out the rest of the project page. That is going to be the rest of this page. We're very close because we've got everything else working. All we need to do is put in our images, get our columns done, and then we will consider this project complete. From there, we are going to talk a little bit about CodePen, why CodePen is a good, helpful tool for your portfolio, get that set up. We're going to make the contact form work. So when we go to this page and actually fill out this contact form, it will send an email that will show up in our inbox. And then from there, we are going to talk about responsiveness. We're going to go through each individual component, drop in a couple classes, and make our page actually look good on mobile and make it respond a little differently. And then if there is time at the end of class, I don't know that there will be, we are going to split, and you can decide whether you would like to go work on your own portfolio, start a new design, start getting going on that, or you can follow along with me. I'm going to do an intro to HTML. I'm going to pull out some slides, and we're going to run through that. With all of that said, whatever you have tomorrow, by tomorrow at noon, please submit to assignment 25. That is, it is not supposed to be graded, and I do think I set it to be graded, so let me fix that really quickly. So with that said, tomorrow by noon, please submit a zip file of anything you would like Christy to have as part of your review. So tomorrow's class, we are going to spend the first half of it. Christy's going to talk about design principles from a developer's perspective. And then the second half, she's going to do one-on-ones with all of you, working on the design of your site, kind of deciding whether you want to keep working on the portfolio site that we've already done, or starting getting set up on your own custom design portfolio or one modeled after someone else's. So whatever you have tomorrow that you would like Christy to be able to see and review and give you feedback on, that is what needs to be submitted by tomorrow at noon. So she has enough time to get the files and all of that stuff. Any questions on that homework?
Is that something that, like, because I'm not fully caught up on the portfolio site, would I be able to like give, like, I'm probably gonna give her like the beginning part. Is that still okay?
Yeah, so you can either give her the beginning part of what you've started coding on, or if you want to just throw together like a Word document or a Google Sheets link in terms of like, hey, this is the example site that I want to use. Here's the outline I've done, or some wireframes that I've thought through. Whatever it is, Christy's going to be really flexible. So if you show up and you're like, I just want to take Max's portfolio site and tweak it so it's my own, you can submit any code that you have there. If you want to submit things and be like, here's the example site, can you give me ideas for design inspiration or how to get started coding this out? that's also completely fine. So Christy's going to be pretty flexible on that.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okie doke, we've got 20 minutes. We are going to get this site finished. So I'm going to go to portfolio.maxmatthews. I'm going to go down and click on my Make It Rain page. And this is the page that we are working on. So I'm going to scoot this over a little bit. I am going to go to my Finder and pull open my desktop. Now, if you have been working in the same folder, that's completely fine. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my day 4 code. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go create a new folder week 5, and I'm going to paste in and rename my day 4 as my day 1. Now, if you're not doing individual day files and you want to just keep going on the files that you're already working on, that is completely fine. So I'm going to go to my VS Code. I'm going to file. No, that's not VS Code. VS Code is being a pain. I'm going to go to File, New Window, and put that down here. Now I can go to File, Open Folder. I'm going to go to my desktop, my code, my week 5, my day 1. I'm going to pop that open. I'm going to go to my index.html. I'm going to go live. And that should pop open what I'm working on or my version of it. I am going to start a live share. And put that in the live stream channel in case you would like to code along. You do not have to code along tonight. So I am going to go a little bit faster to get this page finished up. And then the other concepts that I'm doing tonight on responsiveness and CodePen and all of that stuff, I will be going slower. So I'm putting that out there now. I am not encouraging you to code along, although I'm not stopping you from coding along. The only thing we are doing between now and 7 o'clock is getting this page finished up. And then later tonight, I will be going slower and making sure that you guys are at a code along pace. So I'm going to come down here. I'm going to click on my Make It Rain project. And this is where I'm at, right? I just have the placeholder for where my content is going to go. I don't have any of this content in here. So I'm going to go back to my weather.html because that's the page that I'm working on. I'm going to shrink up my sidebar. But before I do that, I'm going to pop open my weather and my style. So I have those to work on. I'm going to close these. Okay. I'm going to go to my weather. I'm going to find, here's all of my navbar stuff that we did on Thursday. Here's my weather app. And here it is showing up. Pause there. Any questions? All projects set up, hopefully a review. Don't need to do any of this, but pausing there to see if anyone's stuck or can't get anything set up like normal.
I just want to make sure that it's week 5, day 1, and inside that it has both the day 3, day 4, and the Netflix.
No, in my week 5, day 1, I just have index, style, weather, and then the weather app picture.
Okay, thank you.
Max,
Yes.
how did you get your weather picture, I guess, so small,
Great question.
Yeah.
The trick is to resize the window before you take the screenshot. So if I back out to my weather app, let me see if this is my final one. This is my final one. And so normally, if I've got the browser this big, it's going to be way too wide when I take the screenshot. So what I did is I shrunk it up to the point, not to that point, because obviously we don't want it to look broken, but I got it as small as possible. And then I took the screenshot of that, and that's what made me get the aspect ratio a little bit closer.
So is your container responsive?
It is, but I don't think any more responsive than what we did in class.
Okay, because mine is like long and skinny, no matter how I resize the thing.
Oh, it was something that you did Thursday to do your screenshot, and then you drag
Command
the
Shift 4.
Command
Yes.
Shift 4, yes.
I don't remember that today.
Yeah, I changed my life. I used to use Command Shift 5 just besides.
Yeah, the other thing you could consider is, you know, if you wanted to, and this may be cheating, but you could just take a picture of the first 3 days of it if you wanted to, just to make it a little bit more presentable in the website. So if you wanted to have a little bit more of a square picture, you could just take a picture of half of it, and that would also probably be enough.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I am going to dive right in. I've got my weather app here, and I've got my picture that needs to show up first. But before I get into any of that, I need to think through my rows and my columns. Now, I don't want to make this a column and then have this be a column separate from this one here. And the reasoning we don't want to do that is because we want to break this up into a 6 and a 6. So really what we're going to do is we're going to say, hey, all of this here is going to be one big row. In here, I'm going to make one column here, and that's going to be like a col 4, and this is going to be a col 8. Then once we go inside that col 8, we're going to have one row here, we're going to have another row here, and this row is going to be broken up into my 6 and my 6.
Oh.
And then we're going to do another 6 and 6, but because we're doing 2 columns, we've got to put that in its own row. And we remember, we never put a column in a column. We can put columns in a row, and that row can go in another column. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So what I'm going to do to get started, I'm going to come down here. I'm going to make my first div class row. I'm going to do my col 4, and I'm going to say col 1, and I'm going to say my div col 8, and that's going to be my col number 2. I'm going to save. I'm going to come back over here. Okay, that looks to be in the right place, but let's go a little bit further. I'm going to add a class called red on both of them. And we're going to take a slightly different approach. We're going to get all of our layout done and then go back in and drop in content. So this is going to be a whole heck of a lot of HTML to make sure it's all in the right spot. And then we're going to go back in and iterate on that. So I'm going to go into my style. I'm going to create a quick one called red. And that's going to be a border of 2px solid red. And now I'm going to be able to see, hey, my columns are starting to form. So I can come back over here, and I'm going to say img. And then if we look, we've got our arrow buttons underneath that. So I'm going to say img is in one div and move that in. And then I'm going to make another div, and I'm going to say arrows. Come back over, take a look, my img and my arrows. And if we look, all of this is centered. So what I can do is just add a text dash center. And now everything is centered. Okay, now we go back in and we say, all right, we got summary and we've got our other things down here. So I'm going to say we have a div, and that div is going to get an h3 of our summary, and then a p tag of text. Come back, we look, summary, text. Great, we're going to keep going. Now we've got our objectives and our future improvements. So we take a stop and we say, okay, do I want it to go inside this div? No, because this div is representing the summary and the text underneath it. Now we need a new section in here. And because we are using columns, we can't just use a div. We need to use a div with the class of row on it. So we come back over here, we do our new div class equals row, but we make sure we're inside our col 8 because our col 8 is this entire div box out here. And so I'm going to say, all right, I need a column. And that column apparently is not going to put in a closing div like it should. Okay, we are going to say h3 objectives, and we've got some bullet points. So I'm going to do an UL for an unordered list, and then an LI for a list item. So I'm just going to say bullet number 1. Then going to come out and I'm going to say, well, I've got my objectives showing up here, but let's make sure that my objectives are taking up the space that I want it to. So I come back over here and I'm going to add my class of red. And now I see that it's the full width. Well, I didn't want it to be the full width, but I didn't tell it what other width it should be. I didn't make this a col 6. And the reasoning behind that is because I can copy that whole thing and paste it. And because I didn't specify a size on either of them, what they will do now is share the sizing. So it's going to automatically size up based off of whatever's left on it. Okay, so that's future improvements. And that is bullet points as well. So if I save that, I get my future improvements working over here. Now, because my links and my tech stack are all part of the same thing, I can take my entire div class row, but I want to make sure it's lining up. So I'm going to click on my div here. This is the closing div tag for the row. So I need to take all of that. I'm going to come outside of it, save it, and say links and tech stack. I'm going to save. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to take a look. My objectives, my links, my tech stack. Okay, the layout is right. These are not bullets, and neither are these. So I'm going to take this out, and I'm going to say, let's do buttons. And then this is like a little badge. So I'm going to come over here, and we're good to go. Pausing there. Any questions on that?
I thought that would have been a span, but I did it.
The span we will use a span for the badges.
Okay.
And the buttons, because the buttons are inlined on Bootstrap by default, we'll use a button tag for those, but they will act just like a span.
Okay.
Any other questions?
Are you viewing this in mobile? Like, do you have a mobile view up right now?
No. This view is kind of like a smaller desktop size. Like this would probably be similar to an iPad, but we will be going back in and adding in responsiveness after the break.
Okay.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I want to just get my image finished and then we'll go on break. So I'm going to add my IMG in here and I'm going to say source equals, and I think I called that weather.png. And close that out, save. Now I've got my weather, but it's obviously huge. So I'm going to add a class to that, and we could go make a full width class and put width 100%, but we are going to use IMG fluid, which is something that Bootstrap provides for us, and it's going to automatically shrink it down for us. So then I'm going to, let's just take out our reds because I think we've got our layout done. We understand where things are.
Will the fluid work if we didn't make our screenshot small?
Yes. Image fluid is coming from Bootstrap. This is basically just saying width 100%.
Okay.
And because you have Bootstrap in your HTML, you don't have to create a class for that in CSS?
Yes, because that image fluid class is actually defined in this link tag. And you can actually even see that working when you go to inspect. When you hover over here, you see how it says image-fluid max width 100% height auto. We didn't actually add that. That is Bootstrap that added that for us. So if we click on that, you can actually see the image mix-ins is coming in from Bootstrap, and that's what's doing all of the work for us there.
Thank you.
Good question. Anything else on that? Okay, let's get our arrows showing up. So our arrows are going to be seeing how I did this. Good, the way I thought we did this. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my Google Fonts. I'm going to browse my Google Fonts and I'm going to go to icons and search for an arrow. And navigate next kind of looks right to me. So I'm going to click on that. I'm going to scroll down. We already have our font set up. Yeah, Larry.
That's what so what's the difference between the variable icons, like if you go further up top, and the static icon fonts?
Yeah, so this is, to be honest, I've never used this. This is,
If you don't know, that's okay. We can skip it. I was just wondering if it was something off the top.
I have used other methods to get icons working other than static icon font. I cannot say that about variable icons. So I have not used one of these before, and I cannot tell you what the benefit of it is.
Okay, thank you.
Perfectly fine question, just one that I don't know the answer to. So I'm going to take my navigate next. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to come down to my image. And in my arrows, I'm going to go ahead and paste in my navigate next. And then I'm going to save that, come back over, and I've got my little arrow showing up there. And I happen to know that this one is the same as our navigate back. I'm going to come over. No, it is most certainly not the same as navigate back. Navigate before. So I just did a search on that. I saw the name there. So now when I come back, I get my two little arrows showing up there. Okay, so let's do a quick little cleanup on this, and then we can go on break. So for my image here, I'm going to add an ID called project image. Actually, you know what? We can target that another way. I will show you how to do that instead. And then on this one, I'm going to say div ID equals navigate arrows. And we're going to do some cleanup on that. So I'm going to, because everything's in my ID project, I can say go in my project and target any images. And in that, I would like to add a border radius of 10 pixels. And what that's going to do is add a nice little curve on our image. And then I'm going to say, hey, in our project, go find any class called navigate arrows. Just kidding. Go find an ID called navigate arrows. And we would like to make the font size on them 36 pixels. And that's not going to work. So we are going to navigate arrows. Do we need to target the span tag? That did it. So I wasn't specific enough there. Because the span already had a font set on it, I couldn't target just my navigate arrows. I needed to go another level down and target my span tag. So this arrow is saying only target span tags that are directly beneath my navigate arrows. If you take it out, it would target any span tag at any level inside navigate arrows. So either way, it should work. And so let's just go a little bit bigger on those. Let's go up to 40. And then I'm going to margin top them down to, let's try 25 pixels. Okay, those are working. Any questions before we go on break?
Well, it was good to see, because I didn't know you could put multiple, like I knew you could put multiple words, but it's good to see how you had did that.
Yeah, CSS selectors are very powerful. And after 10 years of using CSS, you're going to get into someone else's code and they're going to use a selector that you've never seen before. And it's going to be like, oh, I don't know, you could do that. Okay, so when we get back from break, I'm going to go ahead and dump in this text for us only because, well, I'm going to dump in the top three. So that is done. When we come back, we are going to add our buttons in. We are going to use Bootstrap buttons for those. We are going to link to CodePen and get CodePen set up. We're going to get these badges operational. We're going to finish our footer, and then we're going to make these buttons work and navigate to the other projects that we have set up. From there, we will layer in responsiveness and probably call it an evening. Any questions before we go on break? Cool. We will take a break, be back at 7:20. Caitlin, if you can stick around, I want to get that fancy mic working.
Okay.
Cool. See you guys at 7:20.
Seeing.
Okay, so I dropped in a couple of our bullet points here, right? And I just want to touch on this for a second. The reason why we're spending so much time on this site is because you should really, really, really have a portfolio site coming out of Careers in Code, right? Because you can't expect someone to hire you as a website developer if you don't have your own website. So while this is a homework project, the reason that we are touching on this is because hopefully by the end of this, you have enough that next week you can deploy it and actually get all set up. So anyway, one thing I noticed is my bullet points seem to be a little bit too far over, and I may have just done a UL in a UL. So let me fix that.
Max, you're sharing the full stack slideshow if you're trying to share your.
Oh, thank you.
You're
Let's
welcome.
try that. No, it moved my monitors on me. Am I sharing the right one now?
No, we still see your VS Code. All right, there you go.
Yes.
Okay, so you see my weather app on the left, on the right, and my code on the left.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Cool. So we've got our bullets in. We are good to go here. We just need to do our buttons, our tech stack badges, and then our little arrows working, and then we can layer in responsiveness. Let me just make sure there's nothing else on my outline. CodePen and the mail list too. Okay, so let's get our buttons working. I'm going to go to getbootstrap.com. I'm going to go to the docs. I'm going to go over to my components. And then I'm going to go down to my buttons. And then I'm going to just take my primary one and I can style that later. So I'm going to copy the whole thing. I'm going to go down to my buttons and I'm going to do a link to CodePen. Eventually, you could add another button in here to GitHub, and that is something that I would recommend everyone do. But that won't be covered until next week of how to set up your repositories and push code and all of that. So we're just going to work with CodePen for now. So I'm going to save. I'm going to come over. There's my CodePen link, and if I wanted to style that with my own colors, I totally could. But to keep it going, I'm going to do my badges next. So I'm going to go to Get Bootstrap. I'm going to do a search for badge, and I'm going to scroll down, and here are these cute little badges going on, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab this, and this is a span. I'm going to paste that in, and I'm going to say HTML question.
I'm gonna have one after, but I'm sorry, Nicole does.
Oh no, it's not an important question. Go, just go.
Larry,
Sorry.
do you have one?
After you do this, I will.
Okay.
Maybe.
So I'm going to copy and paste these in, and I'm going to say CSS and Bootstrap. And I'm going to save. I'm going to come back over. I'm going to take a look, and those are all showing up the way I want. So,
Wow.
Now I do have a question.
okay.
So when I did mine, like HTML and CSS and Bootstrap was big as all outdoors.
So
And
is it possible that you copied this H6 or this H1 tag by accident?
nope, because I tried it both ways. I tried it with just the span thing, and then I went ahead and put like a H something on it to see if that would make a difference, and it didn't. So I actually had to make a badge class and do some magic behind the scenes. I don't know why.
So it is. I couldn't tell you. I could take a look at your code if you want to pull it up, and I could take a look that way.
Okay. You want me to do it later or now?
You can do it now.
Okay. I have to do this.
He has 8 monitors.
All right. Share. to,
Five. I can't wait to the weekend, man. This we gotta get over. I gotta go study. I need free time to study.
you need to see the,
Okay, so you've got your H3, your call, your badges, all of that looks right there.
so that's your side, that's your
Oh,
photo.
okay.
Um,
Okay, so let me see your CSS.
okay. So I actually made this badge class right here.
One RAM, keep the
Um,
big one. RAM.
Look at your 165.
165.
You said apply a font size of 3 REM, so 3 times its normal size to any span tag in the project page.
Oh, there you go. Thank you so much, Max.
No
All
problem.
right.
Yeah, and that's the kind of the double-edged sword of using a CSS selector, right? Of you want to be specific enough so you don't accidentally apply it to other things, and that's very much a thing that happens frequently.
Got it.
Okay,
Very much confusing.
so going back, now am I on the right screen? Because Zoom is putting things in weird places right now. Am I sharing the
Yes.
right one? Okay. So we've got our tech stack going on. We've got our buttons down in the bottom. Let's spend a minute getting our CodePen working. So this is where I will go a little bit slower so you guys can follow along with me if you would like. Let me show you what the end result is though here. I actually like the demo live button better, so I'm gonna change it to that. When I click on demo live here on my live site, you see how it brings up the weather down in the bottom, and then it also has all of my HTML and my CSS going on in here. So CodePen is a free service that basically allows you to put your code in and have it so other people can take a look. So it's great for portfolio websites. It's great for when you're working with someone else and you're saying, here's how it's working. I can't get it to do this thing, and they can come in and tweak the code and all of that. So what you can do is just go to codepen.io. It is not codepen.com. And you can click the sign up link. I would encourage you to sign up with GitHub because you should have a GitHub account already. If you don't, go ahead and create one in advance because you will need one for next week. So
I put that, I don't remember what it was.
if you do that, I'm going to log in with my GitHub and I'm going to authorize CodePen. And from here, what I can do is up at the top left, it says create pen. I'm going to click on that. And then I'm going to go back in and I'm going to open my weather app in my VS Code. And I'm just going to copy all of my index.html and paste it into the HTML over here. And what that will do is make it show up, but it doesn't have any of our CSS on it, right? It's kind of ugly. So then I come back over, I grab my style.css, I copy that, and I paste that into my CSS over here, and boom, all my styling pops in. So from there, I'm going to save it, and I'm going to name it up here, right? So I'm going to say weather app. And then the other thing I need to do is make sure that it is publicly accessible. So in order to do that, oh, by default, they are publicly accessible. So if I copy this URL and send it to you guys in the live stream, you guys will actually be able to pull up that and see my code, right? And you won't be able to make any edits to it because you're not signed in as me. But this is a great way to show off your code and actually have it running somewhere without having to deploy it and have it on a domain and have all of that stuff going on, right? So I'm going to make sure I have this URL. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to come back to my code, and I'm going to wrap the entire button in an A tag. And the reason I'm doing that is because I want it so if anyone clicks on the button anywhere, I want it to take them to my CodePen. So on the A tag, I'm going to add an href and paste that in. And I'm going to save. I'm going to close out of it. I'm going to go to code. I'm going to refresh. When I click demo live, it's going to take me to my CodePen and it's going to show me everything that I want. But the problem is that it took me out of my website. right? I don't want to leave my website. I want it to open this up in a new tab. And so we can do that by coming back into the A tag and adding another attribute on it called target underscore blank. And what that's going to do is now when I'm on my page and I click on demo live, and remember to save and refresh. Now, when I click on demo live, it's going to open it in a new tab for me up at the top. So that target blank is just a special attribute that the browser knows, hey, go ahead and open this in a new tab. Pausing there in case anyone wants to follow along or has any questions.
No, I'm not even close to being there, so.
Anyone have questions about that?
I just have a quick question about CodePen.
Yep.
If we're going to be sharing our code, should we, like the things that we might have commented out because it didn't work or because we were just trying it out, are those things that we should probably take out if we're sharing that?
Very good question. The answer is it depends. If you've commented it out because it didn't end up working or you decided not to go that route or whatever it is, then yes, you should delete out those comments before you put it in CodePen, because CodePen is essentially publishing that code, right? But if it's some comment like end of column or, end of navbar row or, whatever it is, and those comments helped you, it's perfectly okay to leave those comments in because the computer doesn't care and whoever's reviewing your code may find those comments helpful.
Thank you.
Wayne, do you have a question?
No, I'm on.
No, okay.
You just spray.
I don't think I got it today.
Any other questions?
No, wait, what we have it.
Okay, I'm gonna keep rolling here. I believe that rounds out
Put it in the chat.
most of our. Chrissy, you have a question?
So you don't-
So this is us making this responsive? Is this
Not yet.
responsive?
Not
Oh, okay,
yet.
okay.
Nope, we're coming back to that. The last
Okay.
thing I want to do is I want to get these arrow buttons working. And then we will do the contact form and then we will make it responsive. So I'm not getting off the hook there yet. So what I've got going on here is when I click on one of these arrow buttons, you see how it takes me to my next project, and you can see I decided to abandon this, but the arrow buttons make it so when I click on one of these, it takes me to the next project in the list, right? And I would recommend that you keep this up to date, right? So as you're completing projects, because otherwise you're going to get to the end of the boot camp and you're going to be like, oh, it was week 17, day 3 that I finished that project, and you're not really going to remember where it was. So I would highly recommend keeping this up to date. Zach, go ahead with your question.
I know this is probably something we're going to get to in a while, but I noticed when you switched from one thing in your portfolio to another, the summary and objectives don't change.
Yes, that is. So let me touch on that right now. So in order to get our page that we can link to another page, we have to create that page, right? Just like we created the weather app page. So what you can do is right click on it. And oddly enough, they don't have a duplicate option, which is kind of odd to me. So if you reveal in Finder, you can right click on it and then duplicate it from there. And while you're in here, you might as well rename it. So I can call this feedback. And while we're in here, we might as well duplicate that again and call it MaxFlix. So what we need to do is I am going to go into my MaxFlix, and I should be going in here and updating all of the content, right? So updating the tech stack, updating the future improvements, understanding the objectives, basically everything should update. For now, just to prove our navigation is working and taking us to a different page, I'm going to just change this H2 up here and call this MaxFlix and call this feedback. And now when I come back over here and click on my arrows, they still don't do anything. Why?
You didn't link them to anything.
Exactly. Yep. So what we need to do is we need to wrap this whole thing in an A tag. So I'm going to say ahref. And this time I don't want to use my target blank because I don't want it opening in a new tab. I just want it to change the current page. And I'm going to change that to link to my maxflix.html. And then the same thing here. I'm going to make that link to my feedback.html. And don't forget my quotes and getting my A tag in properly. I save, I come over, I refresh, and now if I click on my arrow, it doesn't work.
We just want to go next.
Feedback, Maxflix. Oh, I did that on my feedback page. That was dumb. So let me go back to my weather page and actually put them in properly. Okay, now let's try that. Now when I click on my arrow, I go over to Maxflix. And then if I'm on the weather page, I'm going to click over and I'm going to go to my feedback. So what you should be doing now, I'm not going to spend class time on it, but for each one of these projects, and it's a lot of work, but it's going to set you up to be able to present everything that you're learning in this class. So you'll want to update the image to make sure the image is of each individual project. You're going to want to update all of these sections, right? Feedback, recreate Google form to collect information, objectives, practice with form inputs, working with my CSS styling, future improvements, make the form save somewhere, integrate an email solution. The links, you want to go in, create a new CodePen, dump in that code, make that all accessible, and then update your tech stack if there are any changes there.
Did you ever get on?
Other than responsiveness, this should round out the page. Anyone else have questions on this?
Where to start? Did you go over it again? How you link them with?
Go over what?
How you link the feedback?
Yep.
And
so in weather.html, we already had our navigate before buttons and our navigate next button, and they're in those two spans. All we did is we added an A tag around the span and linked it to the name of the file that we just created. So over here, we don't now just have weather.html. We also have maxflix and feedback.html. Those are the files that we're linking them to. And then all we need to do is put an anchor tag around what we want to turn into the link and tell it where to go.
Max.
Yes.
If we were to add a fourth project and we were on the weather app HTML, would we then change the previous arrow to that fourth project?
Yes. So what you would do is for this one, so think about it as, okay, I'm going across here, right? So this is my weather app. This should be my 30-second feedback, and this should be my Maxflix. So in here,
the 30-second feedback.
you would say, okay, for the 30-second feedback, we're going to go back to the weather or forward to Netflix.
We went in the breakout room.
On Netflix, we're going to go forward to weather or back to 30-second feedback.
Okay, and then as we add more, we just kind of
keep on updating those links.
Update for that. Yep. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? And you don't have to do that. The only reason I did it was when we are back on this weather app, you don't want to necessarily have to go back to the portfolio to go into the next project. So that's the only reason I added these little navigation arrows, is so that when we navigate forward or back, we don't have to go back to the portfolio page, but they're totally optional. That's not something that you absolutely have to do if you don't want. Any other questions?
I still on my phone asleep tonight.
I know, right?
Okay, so I'm going to move forward onto our feedback form. I'm sorry, our contact form. So on index.html, we're in here and we've got this. Come on. We've got all of these input fields in here, right? But when we click send on the page, it doesn't really do anything, right? Wouldn't it be nice if someone could actually fill this out and you would get an email? So the service we're going to use is called mailthis.to. And this is a free service. You don't even need to sign up for it.
Can I copy this from the VS Code or no?
Yes,
What?
yep, that's completely
Okay.
fine.
Thank you.
So what we're going to do is what we have to do is take all of these inputs and put it in this form tag. And then we need to make sure our inputs have the right names on them so that when the email comes through, it gets sent to the right place, right? So I'm going to take this entire form tag. No, I'm not, because it's going to be a pain. Okay. I'm going to copy and paste that into a new file. And I'm going to take just this form tag, come back to my index. And if you'd like to follow along with me on this, you totally should. I got this again at mailthis.to, and there's a link to that in the resources as well. So I'm going to take that and I need to identify, here are all of my form inputs. So I am going to say, hey, my form is going to start at the top here, and it's going to go all the way down to here. I'm just going to clean up my form tag. So basically, we're making sure all of our inputs are in this form. We are then going to change you@mail.com to my email. Please don't use my email. I don't want to forward emails for you. Use your own personal email here. Someone else has done that before, believe it or not. And I'm going, I'm not applying for junior end dev jobs. And then I'm going, oh, that's why. So make sure you use your own email address here. And then what we need to do is, you see how it has a name, reply to, and then that type submit. That's what we need to do. So we're going to come in here, and this email, we're going to add a name to it that says _ reply to. And that's just helping mail this to know, hey, this is their email address that you're sending in. So when you hit the reply button, it actually goes to the right person. And then we are going to come in and add a name tag to this that just says name. And then I'm going to add another one to this that says last name. And then we just need that type submit going on down here. So I'm going to come down to this button and I'm going to add my type equals submit. And I don't know if it's going to send that text area through. So we're going to try by adding a name here that says message. Don't know how that's going to work, but we're going to give it a try anyway. So I'm going to come over here. I'm going to go back to my code. I'm going to refresh. I'm going to type in Matthews test at test.com. Hi there, and hit send. And that is going to take a minute, longer than I would like.
Okay. What happened to your little mailbox?
I don't know why that is taking so long.
That's not a question. So it's not an important question.
Okay, well, that's a bummer. Normally that should be working and it should be sending an email to me.
Did it complete in the network tab, Max? Oh. Nope, guess not.
I wonder if it doesn't like my email because it's different. Let me try.
Shoot me an email.
Well, maybe they are having some downtime tonight because that's a bummer. That was working earlier today. Yeah, and it's like not even responding. It's just timing out.
Yep.
Okay. Well, normally that would work. I will test that code tomorrow and shoot you guys a message to see if that is working tomorrow or not. So that is adding mail this to as a contact form. And the reason we have to do it that way is that the browser can't send an email itself, right? A web server is the one that has to do that, because if the browser could send an email, there would be massive spam issues. So this mail this to is a great service because it allows you as a front end only developer to make a contact form work without having to set up a backend web server and have hosting working and connected to an email server and all of that stuff. So I'm not sure why that isn't working, but I will test that tomorrow and get back to you guys on that.
Max, can you show one more time what you put in the send button?
Yes.
Or did you change it from a button to something else?
Yeah, so the three things I did, I added the form tag up at the top and made sure the form tag started before any of my inputs and encapsulated all of my inputs going down to and including the button tag. I then added names to each one of the form fields. So I made sure name was in here, last name, and this underscore reply to, which is a special field that they provide. I added the name message. And then the last thing I did is I added a type equals submit on the button tag. And that is what makes it actually submit when you click the button.
Thank you.
Just gonna try one last time. And not have any success. Okay. Give me 1 minute and then we will dive into getting our site responsive.
Dang, I'm never gonna get to it. I know, right? I know, like,
Once you
I
get-
keep
listen,
getting
once-
optimistic.
Once you get like one of the product pages started, you really just gotta copy and paste it, but change everything.
Well, they said not to copy and paste.
It's your code, copy and paste your code.
Well, yeah, like if it's from a website.
Don't take his code, copy
Well,
and paste.
yeah, I know.
Okay.
That's the hard way.
So we are going to dive in now to responsiveness. And then the rest of class, we can spend either going over HTML basics, or you can start working on your portfolio or getting caught up on the rest of it. So one thing that we have going on here is my page is really wide, right? So if I pull this over, everything's spanning the full width of the screen. And while that's not really a problem on a 28-inch screen, that could get even bigger, right? So it's generally a good idea to keep our entire page contained in a container. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch back here. And I've got all of my sections going on here, but no containing element. So I'm going to add a div class called container and take my closing div, come all the way down to the bottom, right before the end of my body. And I'm going to put my closing div down in there. So I come back over, and now all of a sudden, my site is nice and contained. Okay, but we still have some problems. If I bring this over, my form gets really crushed in, right? Certain things work well. This responds pretty well, but we have other issues here of the contact form, right? Let's target that first. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll up and find where my contact form is. And that would be here. And what we said is, hey, this is always going to be a col 6, and this is always going to be a col 6. But we can use the power of the responsive grid system to make things wrap. So basically what we want to do is we want to say, hey, on a medium-sized screen, make it a col 6. But, and order matters here, you always go smallest to largest. You want to say on a small screen, I would like it to be 12. I would like it to be the full width. And the same for down here. On small screens, make it full width, but on medium screens, make it side by side, 6 and 6. So let's see how that works. I come over here, instantly, that's already correct. But as I drag it out and we get bigger and bigger, now all of a sudden, that's wrapping properly. So we don't need to redo all of our content or make a fully different mobile site. We can pull this over, and once it gets to a certain point, it just puts it together, right? So now this is taking up a full 12. This is taking up a full 12 until we hit that medium or small screen size, and that's when it's going up to the 6. And we can continue stacking those if we wanted to, right? We could say, okay, well, if it's on a small screen size, we can actually play with that down here. We can say, hey, if it is a small screen size, make it a 12. But if it's a medium-sized screen, make it a 6. I'm on the wrong spot. I meant to do that on my projects.
Is there any reason why you put extra small in the other one?
No, this would work the same as basically doing this. So those two should size properly. Let me make sure that's true. Yeah, so that's effectively doing the same thing. I feel like that's not answering your question though.
Well, because when I looked at the documentation, there's no class infix for extra small.
There isn't?
No, it just says if the screen is lower than less than 576 pixels, whatever it is, that it goes, it says, but there's no class infix for extra small. If you go to 6 responsive breakpoints.
Oh, that's.
So if you click on the 6 responsive breakpoints, right in the blue, yeah, and go down, it'll show you where the breakpoint, see?
Interesting.
Oh. Caitlin, tell me I'm not crazy. It wasn't always like that, was it?
Unless your brain is just material UI brain.
Maybe they took away the extra small and then gave us the extra large, because they said extra large is something new relatively.
Maybe. I think I've only ever used small. I don't usually use extra small, but that could be true.
Yeah, my brain is just fried. So basically, this is the equivalent of taking that off. Is that what you're telling me? Larry, you're blowing my mind here.
I tell you, I studied this all weekend instead of doing Netflix.
Where did I go? Here.
Whoa.
Okay. That is, you learn something new every day.
Okay. Okay, Larry. Okay. Okay, Larry's teaching the class now.
So this would be the equivalent of, I should be able to do a 12 and a 12, and then this would be technically the more correct way of doing it.
So now you're saying the
small at 12, and then when you get up to the 6, go bigger.
Oh, pull it all the way. Let me see. Make full screen. Okay.
And then this is our container over here that's making it not go beyond a certain point.
Can you make it extra small?
No.
That's the smallest I can go without going into DevTools. So you still get a little bit of a container border going on.
Do we know if that's the small size or the extra small at that width?
It is considered extra small. If we inspect, and then when you resize, look in the top right of my window, that's going down to 500. And then if you look in the Bootstrap documentation, it will tell you where the breakpoints are, and anything below 576 would be considered extra small.
Thank you.
Wow. I understand that. Clear as day.
All right. So we can keep going on here and just peppering in some responsiveness. So when I pull these down, maybe I don't want them to be broken into thirds, maybe I want to just do half and half on those. So I'm going to say, okay, for my medium-sized screens, make it a 6, but on my small screens or below, make it a 12. And again, I applied that to the wrong class. What's wrong with me tonight? Okay, here, my cards, I'm going to say, hey, on small screens, make it a 6. But on medium screens, make it a 4. And say, yes.
I'm a little confused.
On
so with like the cow medium 4.
Yep.
From what I studied this weekend, I felt like it was saying be a cow 4 unless the screen goes below the medium threshold, then take up the whole space.
Then take the 6.
Okay, because you have the other thing in there. But if you didn't have the 6 in there, it would take up the whole screen.
Correct.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
So what we're doing here is, oh, and now my 6 is going to make a little liar out of me. Okay, so on my 6, shrink it down, make it only go half width. But when we pull this out and hit the medium size, then take up 4, 4, 4, or 1/3 of the screen each.
Okay, cool. All right.
Oh, Lordy.
Making sense?
Yes, sir.
Tiny bit.
So responsiveness is a never-ending battle, and everyone will do responsiveness differently, right? So if we go back here, responsiveness is not just a matter of making columns different sizes. It's little things like when our nav bar gets small enough, no longer show the links at the top. Instead, make it so when you click on the menu button, the links drop down, right? So there are multiple approaches to responsiveness here. It's not just a responsive grid system. There are other things that you may make responsive. I'm going to check to see one thing on my live site. What we did is Max Matthews is nice and big, right? But when we hit a certain size, you see on mine, it drops the size down. We can do that with our media query. So this is not just responsiveness in the Bootstrap grid. This is not just responsiveness built into Bootstrap components. We can also make our site responsive by hand. And so the way we're going to do that is we are going to pull this out over here. I'm going to go find my H1, and that's in my intro section. So I'm going to pop open my style.css. I'm going to say in my intro section, target my H1 and make the font size something like 48 pixels. But the problem is now it's smaller, but I don't want it smaller on all the screen sizes. I only want it smaller once it hits a certain threshold. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a media query here. And I'm going to say only on screen sizes where the max width is, let's pick a number out of the air that I totally haven't tested before class. Save, and this should be screen only and the max width. So now I'm going to come back over here. My text is still nice and big. And when I come down and hit a certain size, oh, I need to adjust that. Now it's going to go smaller. But I went to a certain point and I want it to shrink down before it wraps onto 2 lines, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click and inspect. And I don't actually want anything in my inspector, but because I have inspect open, that means that when I drag the window, I'm going to get that little thing up at the top. So while I drag, I'm going to pay attention to that first number and find out when it wraps. So it looks like it's wrapping right at 768. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to say, hey, on sizes 768 and below, go ahead and shrink it down. And so when I come back over to my Chrome, I pull it out, I get nice and big. And then when I start shrinking down, it's going to shrink that down for me as well. And pull that all the way over and I'm good to go.
So the below is just something that it automatically knows to do?
Yeah, basically you're saying, hey, anything in this media query only apply while the width is a maximum of 768. So if the width goes over the maximum, don't apply it. You could
Oh,
also
okay.
do that in reverse. You could say, hey, only apply this if the min width is 768. So when you say max width, you're saying anything between 0 and 768. If you say min width, what you're saying is 768 and above.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions on that? I will say that I have gone through on my example portfolio site and peppered in some responsiveness if it's needed. So feel free to go through and take a look at how I did my classes on that. But that should give you a good idea of how to get started with responsiveness. Any other questions for tonight? Okay. I do have a intro to HTML and CSS review, but I feel like that's going to be a lot to cram into 25 minutes, and we all probably have Monday brain. Clearly I do. So what I'm going to suggest is we use the next 25 minutes to clean up our portfolio sites, or if you would like to start your own portfolio site from scratch and get input from Christy, that is also completely fine. So
would it be safe to say, like, if I wanted to do a different one, I could do that in my free time, but I should stick to what we're doing now and get feedback and wait till later?
So it's up to you. We are done with this site for now, right? I'm squeezing no more days of teaching content out of this. So if you would like to use this as kind of your placeholder portfolio site until you have time to go back and make your own, that's completely fine. If you are coming into this and you're like, I hate that portfolio site, I don't want my name anywhere on it, I want to dive in, get more HTML and CSS practice, I'm going to go back to my example site and start wireframing that out, start getting the grid system working, start doing all of my styling that way, that is completely fine. So what you may want to do is spend time with Christy tomorrow after she does her design lecture and you're one-on-one and saying, hey, I've got this site. I know I want to change a couple colors on it, but what I would really like to do is get some input. Here's this example site that I would like to make. Do you have any tips for getting that started? That's a completely fine way to go into tomorrow's class. So you don't need a whole portfolio site done from scratch for tomorrow. But just picking Christy's brain in terms of design, or going and looking at some portfolio site and being like, how did they do this? Like, I get everything that Max taught, but at the same time, like, this is a really cool website. I don't even know where I would start on this. And Christy should be able to give you some feedback on that as well. So however you want to take it, and if you have some ideas of like, I think Max's about section is stupid, but what I really want to do is put in like a portfolio, a photo section, right? I may do some design work on the side and I want to change up the site that way. That's also completely fine. So the one-on-ones going into tomorrow, you don't need a ton done on, but you do need to think through from a design perspective, what is next on my portfolio site and what would I like Christy to point me in what direction for next steps.
Max, can I ask you a quick question? Because I've been having a problem on my VS Code and maybe you can show me.
Sure.
Well, on my VS Code, when I go to like open up a file, because I've been just literally dragging like my weak files over to VS Code. I don't know if it's the settings that I have on my VS Code where I press open, it's not allowing me to open, like it's not opening up the file folder, like the Finder or anything like that.
So are you going to file open folder up at the top?
No, like when you first open it, I go to open, or I've tried that as well.
You don't want to go to open because open is going to open it in the existing workspace. But if you go to file open folder, basically what it's going to do is open a whole new workspace for you inside of that folder. So it is going to file open is totally different than going to file open folder. file open folder is the one that you should be using. But if that's not working for you, if you still can't get a folder open using that method, let me know and we can go from there.
I was having issues too, Max, trying to open something else, and I tried to use both methods and it didn't work.
Yeah, so you have to be careful, because if you go file open here and you go and like you pick let me come out of this folder and go into weather and open this. Don't save that. Now, of course, it's gonna show me up and do the right thing. Let me try just doing file open. My code, week 5, day 1, index, open. Okay, so now you've like kind of confused it, right? Because this index.html isn't in your file explorer over here. So whenever I'm in VS Code, I almost always go to file open folder, get my folder set up right from the get-go, and then go from there and start making my files.
In the code.
What's that?
No, just a joke.
Oh.
Over here.
I will say that if you would like my final code, I'm actually going to drop a link to my GitHub, because this portfolio code is just a little bit more finished. So while you're in VS Code, I've got everything set up here. You can ignore this CNAME file that's to get GitHub pages hosting working. I know you guys don't have a ton of GitHub experience, but if you click into, excuse me, any one of these files, you can see all of the code right in the browser. And then you can also go to code and download zip down here. And that will download a zip file. And if you pop that zip file open and take a look in the folder, that will also have all the files in it as well. So that is how you can get to the final version of this project, in case you just want to start working from mine.
Thank you.
I'm going to.
This is not a live.
I have a question.
Not live share
Yep.
today, right?
Can I, let me share my screen because I'm trying to. Ooh.
End it.
So where did he say go?
Okay, there we go.
Yep, you're good.
So I don't know why this is popping up here.
I'm stopping your screen share and doing that. Let me make sure I have it on mine, and then I will go over that. That is a very good question. Another student asked that in their one-on-ones, and it was annoying as heck for me to figure out where it was. Let me close out of that folder.
Uh-oh. Did
Hyperlink, they're underlined.
Oh,
Yeah.
So you gotta
Underline.
style it and say.
Information done.
Yeah, okay, so let me just pop open Review and Finder, open this. And when we go to it, you'll notice mine's a little bit harder to see, but it's that light blue there. Let me see if I can go up super big. That little light blue thing is driving me crazy, right? And what I did is I right-clicked and I inspected on it. And then I came down and I tried to look at all of the styles that were getting applied, right? So the color is what we wanted, but you notice there's this text decoration underline. When I take that and uncheck that, and then also go to my feedback link here, are you kidding me? That's a joke. There we go. For whatever reason, unchecking it didn't work. If you force that text decoration to none, it makes the little thing go away. And basically what that text decoration underline is doing is when you think of a hyperlink, most hyperlinks are underlined, right? But because we put the anchor tag around the left and right buttons, it was trying to underline them, but because these arrows are so tall, you only saw the little underline between the two of them. So the fix for that is in your code, in your project, target the A tags, and then make the text decoration none. And that should target in our, we've got our ID of project somewhere, our section ID project, and then in these A tags, that's what we want to put a text decoration on none on.
Okay, thank you.
If anyone is in person and has a question, just hit the mute button because you guys muted yourself, which is fine, but.
We didn't say anything.
I said I need to go home because my iPad is not being a good second monitor, and I'm going crazy.
What it is, you gotta get your cord and plug them both together. Because after a while, I noticed mine would just do whatever it want to do, and then when I would plug it in,
I'm going bananas here. Like this is too much.
All right.
Hey, Max.
Yes.
Is it possible you can assist me? Now, I'm still having that same issue I've been having. I can't submit anything.
Okay, yes, go ahead and share your screen.
Oh, wait.
Okay.